The klaxons shrieked, a raw, grating sound that vibrated through Luna Vasquez's bones. A relentless soundtrack to the dying gasp of Starfall Station. Her breath hitched, each inhale a sharp, metallic tongue of recycled air, growing thinner by the minute. She was supposed to be patching up a broken arm from a zero-G training mishap, not performing triage on a collapsing orbital habitat. But that was a week ago. Now, her patient, a hulking, four-eyed Zelosian engineer named Cathar, was just another piece of the rapidly failing infrastructure. He lay prone on the deck plating, one of his four arms pinned under a buckled support strut, his scales a sickly ash gray, where they should have been vibrant emerald. Pressure integrity failing in section Gamma 7. Main coupling is rupturing. A digitized voice, tinny and stressed, squawked over the comms. It was the station's AI, Unit 734. Its usually calm tenor frayed. Luna, a human field medic whose primary tools were usually hyposprays and dermal regenerators, now gripped a heavy-duty plasma cutter, its beam spitting angry blue sparks as she tried to sever the strut. Sweat stung her eyes, mixing with the grime on her face. Her white medic's tunic, once pristine, was now ripped, singed, and stained with a cocktail of hydraulic fluid and Zylosian ichor. Almost there, Cathar. Just hold on, she yelled, her voice hoarse, competing with the groan of twisting metal. Cathar let out a low, pained rumble, his upper eyes fixed on her with a mixture of terror and trust. His people, the Zylosians, were renowned for their stoicism, but the station's slow, agonizing demise was testing everyone's limits. A tremor shook the deck, sending a cascade of debris from the ceiling. Lights flickered, plunging them into near-total darkness, before the emergency glow strips stuttered back to life, casting long, distorted shadows. The air pressure dipped noticeably, sucking at her ears. This is it, she thought, a cold dread snaking through her. The life support is going. She gave the plasma cutter one last desperate surge. The strut groaned, then with a screech of tortured metal, it snapped. Cathar cried out as his arm was freed, flopping uselessly to his side. Got you. Luna grabbed his uninjured arms and pulled, grunting with effort. Cathar was heavy, even in the weakening artificial gravity. We need to get to the main habitat ring now. Just as she helped him hobble upright, a loud, explosive crump echoed from deep within the station's core, followed by a series of cascading bangs. Like a giant chain snapping link by link, the lights died completely. Silence, thick and absolute, descended for a terrifying second, punctuated only by the ragged wheezing of Cathar and Luna's own pounding heart. Then, Unit 734's voice, no longer tinny, but gravely distorted, cut through the darkness. Catastrophic power core failure, initiating emergency shutdown protocols. Life support will cease in all non-essential sectors in T-minus 60 minutes. Main habitat ring estimated integrity at 30%. Evacuation impossible. No viable escape vessels detected. All personnel prepare for terminal shutdown. The chilling announcement was followed by an equally chilling click, and then total silence once more. The emergency glow strips remained dark. 60 minutes, 1 hour. That wasn't a terminal shutdown. That was a death sentence. Luna felt a cold wave wash over her, a primal fear that threatened to paralyze her. But then, a stubborn spark ignited within her. No, not like this. She was a medic. Her job was to keep people alive, even when the odds were impossible. Especially when they were impossible. She fumbled for her helmet, the internal comms still working. Unit 734. Unit 734. Do you copy? Silence. Only the faint, dying hum of the station, and Caithar's labored breathing answered. Damn it, Luna cursed, then took a deep breath. Her medical training kicked in, pushing the panic aside. Assess, prioritize, act. Even if the action was futile, inaction was death. Cathar, leaning heavily on her, coughed, a rattling sound. Luna ... there is nothing. The core is gone. We felt it. His voice was low, filled with resignation. It is the end? No, it's not, Luna snapped, more to convince herself than him. There's always something. Always. What exactly failed? Cathar, what did you feel? Cathar, despite his pain, managed to focus his upper eyes. The primary containment field, then the antimatter reaction, a cascade. The fail-safes... They did not hold. Luna processed this, her mind racing. An antimatter core. Starfall Station was a deep space research outpost, and its power source was cutting-edge, unstable, and now, apparently, completely destroyed. But she was a medic. She knew biology, not fusion physics. Then, the dilemma hit her. The main habitat ring, the only place with any chance of prolonged life support, was miles away, across failing sections, through crumbling corridors. And Cathar, her patient, couldn't move fast enough. He needed medical attention, pain relief, and help with his crushed arm. Aid she couldn't properly give without power, but getting to the ring was their only shot, even if it was just to die with others. Cathar, she said, her voice softer, but with a steel edge. We have to move. Every second counts. He looked at her, then at his mangled limb. It is pointless, Luna. I slow you. Go, save yourself. Perhaps some others will reach the ring before. He trailed off, the implicit before the air runs out. Hanging in the void. Luna stared at him, then at the pitch-black corridor. Go alone? Leave Cathar, a living, breathing being, to a slow, suffocating death? Her training screamed no. Her humanity roared never. Shut up, Cathar, she said, pulling his arm over her shoulder, forcing herself to ignore the wet squish of his scales against her ear. We go together, or we don't go at all. This was it, the first test, not of her medical skills, but of her core belief. No one gets left behind, not on her watch. The journey through the dying station was a descent into a mechanical purgatory. Every few steps, the floor would buckle or a pipe would burst, spewing acrid fumes or scalding coolant. The air grew perceptibly thinner, the low hiss of decompression a constant, unnerving companion. Luna felt the familiar prickle of hypoxia at the edges of her vision, but she pushed it down, focusing on Cathar's labored breathing and the rhythmic throb of her own heart. There, Cathar wheezed, pointing with his good arm towards a faint, flickering light in the distance. Habitat ring, emergency power, hope. A fragile, almost painful thing flared in Luna's chest, but as they approached, the flickering light resolved into a horrifying scene. The massive blast door leading to the habitat ring was sealed, sparks erupting from its reinforced seams. Around it lay a scattering of bodies, Xylosians, a couple of gray-skinned Regellians, and even a few humans, their faces frozen in expressions of terror or resignation. Unit 734's final distorted message had been an understatement. The 30% integrity was a generous lie. The habitat ring was failing too. Bleeding atmosphere, its failsafes buckling under the cascading system collapse. No, Luna whispered, the word a raw, tearing sound in her throat. She sank to her knees, Cathar collapsing beside her. The air here was even worse. A cold, stale breath that offered no comfort. Then, a faint, rhythmic thump, thump, thump echoed from beyond the sealed door. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A heartbeat. Someone was alive inside. Maybe many someones. Trapped. They're sealed in, Cathar rasped, his voice full of despair. No power to open. The emergency override. It would be rooted through the core. It is gone. Luna pressed her ear against the cold metal of the door. The thumping continued. Weak, but persistent. Children. There were children on this station. She remembered the small creche in the habitat ring. The tiny, human infants. The Xylosian hatchlings. A fresh wave of resolve washed over her, chilling her more than the dying air. True magnitude of the problem settled over her like a shroud. The main power core was not merely offline. It had catastrophically imploded. The station wasn't just losing power. It was slowly, agonizingly tearing itself apart from within. The core had been an antimatter containment unit, relying on precise magnetic fields to suspend volatile antimatter. A breach in that field meant an uncontrolled annihilation reaction, a miniature star burning itself out. The explosion they'd heard wasn't the end, but the beginning of a slower, more insidious collapse. The structural integrity was compromised. The internal gravity generators were fluctuating wildly, and their primary life support systems were now completely inert. The station was a tomb, but a tomb that was actively crumbling. She looked at Cathar, his four eyes now dull with pain and oxygen deprivation. His arm was swelling rapidly, turning a bruised purple-black under his scales. Without immediate medical attention, it would be a secondary, but inevitable cause of death. There has to be a way, Luna muttered, scanning the wreckage around them. Frayed cables, burst conduits, scattered circuit boards. Her medical knowledge screamed uselessness. This was a job for engineers, for physicists, not for a field medic whose expertise was in stitching flesh, not soldering circuits. But then a memory surfaced. Her grandfather, a gruff old mechanic on Earth, always used to say, "Tools are just extensions of your will, Luna. If you don't have the right one, make it. Adapt." He'd taught her to fix a sputtering combustion engine with a paperclip and a piece of chewing gum. That chaotic creativity, that human adaptability, was what separated them. "Cathar," she said, her voice gaining strength, "tell me everything you know about antimatter containment fields. Not the theory, the hardware, the backup systems. What were the redundancies? How did they fail?" He blinked, surprised by her sudden shift in tone. "The primary field generators, 12 of them around the core. Redundant power conduits from the auxiliary reactors. The fail-safes, ... A series of inert gas injectors meant to flood the chamber if containment failed, neutralizing the reaction. And they didn't hold," Luna finished, her mind racing. "Why? A short? A cascade failure? Unknown," Cathar coughed. "The feedback loop ... It was too fast. The power surge fried the control relays for the gas injectors. They could not activate." Luna looked around. Relays, power, antimatter, containment. Her mind, usually focused on the intricate systems of the human body, started to see the station as a massive broken organism. If the heart, core was dead, could she build a temporary pacemaker? A chilling thought occurred to her, sparking a dangerous, desperate idea. "Cathar, if the containment failed, is there still raw antimatter in the core chamber? Just ... Not contained?" Caithar's remaining eyes widened in horror. "Yes, a residual charge. It is unstable, annihilating slowly as it interacts with stray matter particles. That is why the integrity continues to fail. It eats the station from within. You are not suggesting ... I'm suggesting we recontain it," Luna said, a wild, reckless glint in her eyes. "Even a small amount, just enough to power this door, or the life support for a few hours. Enough to get help, enough to survive." Cathar stared at her as if she had grown a third head. "That is madness, Luna. No one would attempt to contain an unstable antimatter residual. It requires specific field generators, immense power, precise calibration, and it is highly explosive if mishandled." "Well, we don't have any of that, do we?" Luna said, already moving, scanning the detritus. "So we'll have to improvise. What do we have that can generate a strong magnetic field? Anything that draws a lot of power, even if it's not meant to?" Her clock had just started ticking, not just the 60 minutes of air, but the silent, unseen timer of the unstable antimatter eating away at their last refuge. If she was wrong, they wouldn't just suffocate, they'd be vaporized. But the alternative was certain death. This was a typically human gamble. High risk, insane odds, but with a sliver of desperate hope. Luna's frantic search began. Cathar, despite his pain, offering what little guidance he could. The heavy lifting magnets from Cargo Bay 3, they are powerful, but non-directional, and the power conduits ... They are fried. "Non-directional is better than no directional," Luna muttered, already rummaging through a discarded maintenance locker. She pulled out a multi-tool, its plasma setting dead, but the sonic welder still functional. "And power conduits can be rerouted. We just need something to focus that field." Her eyes fell on the mangled remains of a large, cylindrical data core, its intricate wiring exposed. "What about something like this? Could we strip the coils? Repurpose the power regulators?" Cathar looked at it, then at her. "Theoretically, the data core's field array is complex, designed for information storage, not energy containment. You would need to reconfigure its internal structure entirely. And the power required ... double quotes." He trailed off, his tone skeptical. "We don't need perfect containment, Cathar. Just enough to stabilize a pocket. A small bubble," Luna insisted, pulling the heavy data core out of the wreckage. "Think outside the schematics. What's the fundamental principle? Strong magnetic field, right? Anything that generates one, the more chaotic, the better. If we can just get it toehold." This was the core of human ingenuity, the ability to look at something designed for one purpose and violently repurpose it for another, often with duct tape, sheer will, and a healthy disregard for standard operating procedures. Other species, the logical Regellians, the meticulous Xylosians, might spend weeks calculating and designing a perfect solution. Humans just tried to jam a square peg into a round hole until the hole broke or the peg did something miraculous. First target was a utility junction box, sparks still intermittently flying from it. The air was growing colder, the recycled oxygen alarmingly thin. Cathar's scales were now visibly paler, his breathing shallow. Luna's head pounded, a dull ache behind her eyes, but she pushed through the fatigue. She was a medic. She knew how to push through pain, how to keep a patient alive, even when every fiber of their being screamed for rest. Now, her patient was the station itself, and the lives of those trapped inside Dot. As Luna began to jury-rig a connection, using scavenged wires from CUM's units and a discarded power cell from a broken utility drone, a new threat emerged. The failing gravity generators. The station began to list, a slow, agonizing tilt that sent debris sliding across the floor. They were now operating on an increasingly slanted surface, struggling against the disorientation. This wasn't just physical discomfort. It was a psychological assault, twisting their perception of stability. Gravity field fluctuation, Cathar managed, gripping a handhold. Internal gyros are failing. We are ... listing heavily. Can we reroute power to them? Luna asked, not even looking up from the intricate wiring she was trying to force into. A makeshift connector, insufficient power. Even if we had a core, Cathar said, his voice laced with grim irony. Luna swore under her breath. Another cascading failure. The stakes were ratcheting up. Not only were they running out of air, and the station crumbling from antimatter decay, but now they were losing their sense of up and down Dot. As she worked, she remembered a desperate field surgery she'd once performed on a remote colony, using a kitchen knife and a welding torch to save a colonist from internal bleeding after a shuttle crash. No fancy medbay, just ingenuity and pure desperation. This was that, but on a cosmic scale. After what felt like an eternity, Luna managed to connect the repurposed data core's wiring to the cobbled-together power cell. It was crude, held together with electrical tape and sheer hope. All right, Cathar, brace yourself. I'm going to try to generate a field. We need to point this towards the core chamber, even from here. What's the most direct path? Cathar, despite his pain, managed to activate a damaged holomap on his wrist-mounted CUM, its projection flickering weakly. The access tunnel ... it leads directly to the primary containment chamber, but it is ... unstable. Debris from the initial implosion. Unstable is better than impassable, Luna grunted, already lifting the heavy, modified data core. It was clunky, awkward, but her human persistence, that stubborn refusal to give up, was overriding her body's screaming protest. As they navigated the increasingly treacherous, tilted corridors, debris rained down and the station groaned around them. They passed through sections that had been utterly annihilated, exposed to the vacuum of space, thankfully sealed off by emergency bulkheads that had, for now, held Dot. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the dying hum of the station. A low, guttural growl echoing from a collapsed ventilation shaft. Cathar froze, his eyes widening. Pithar, the station's maintenance bots. They are malfunctioning. Without central control, they default to aggressive defense protocols. They see ... trespassers. Luna cursed. Just what they needed. Malfunctioning, heavily armed security bots. Another threat converged. Their desperate attempt to re-energize the station had just put them on a collision course with its own automated defenses. This was no longer just a race against time and decay. It was a fight for their lives against the very systems designed to protect the station. The growl intensified, a metallic snarl that reverberated through the now heavily slanted corridor. Two red lights, like malevolent eyes, flickered to life in the darkness of the ventilation shaft. A maintenance bot, a hulking, spider-like construct designed for heavy lifting and welding, but also equipped with pulse cannons for security, began to emerge. Stay low, Cathar, Luna hissed, pulling the injured Xylosian behind a stack of fallen conduits. Her makeshift antimatter containment device, the rewired data core, felt impossibly heavy now. Her hands, usually deft with surgical instruments, trembled with strain and the cold. The bot clanked out fully, its multiple limbs splayed, pulse cannons whirring. It wasn't just malfunctioning, it was damaged. Its plating scarred, one of its optical sensors cracked, giving it a blind, enraged appearance. It scanned the corridor, its targeting reticule sweeping over them. "It cannot be reasoned with," Cathar whispered, his voice weak. "Its logic loops are corrupted. It will fire on anything it identifies as an anomaly." "Great," Luna muttered. "An anomaly." That summed up her entire plan. Her solution to the antimatter problem was probably an anomaly in the entire galaxy. Bot locked onto them, its whirring escalating to a high-pitched whine. Luna knew it was moments from firing. She couldn't fight it. She was a medic, not a combatant. But she was also human, and the human instinct for desperate, chaotic creativity surged. Her eyes darted around, searching for anything. A burst pipe, a failing power conduit, an exposed circuit. She saw a large, discarded coolant tank, its valve partially open, slowly leaking icy vapor onto the super-chilled deck. "Cathar, can you hit that tank with something? Anything heavy?" she asked, already fumbling for her multi-tool sonic welder. He looked bewildered, but his Xylosian instincts to follow orders in a crisis kicked in. He grabbed a loose piece of wreckage, a heavy access panel, with his good arm. "Now!" Luna yelled Dot, as the bot's cannons hummed to life. Cathar threw the panel with surprising force. It clanged against the coolant tank, rupturing the valve completely. A geyser of sub-zero liquid coolant erupted, spewing across the corridor. Simultaneously, Luna activated her sonic welder, aiming it at a frayed power conduit sparking wildly near the ceiling, directly above the coolant spray. The sonic vibrations, combined with the extreme cold, caused the already compromised conduit to fracture violently, sending a burst of raw, uncontrolled energy arcing downwards. The arcing energy hit the gushing coolant. Water, even supercooled, was conductive. The surge of raw power, combined with the spreading liquid, created a massive, chaotic EM pulse. The maintenance bot, caught in the flash, shrieked, its red eyes flickering wildly before going dark. Its whirring ceased. It slumped, limbs collapsing. With a heavy thud, completely inert, Luna and Cathar were momentarily blinded, and the air crackled with ozone. When their vision cleared, the bot was dead, fried by a medic's improvised short circuit. It was an apparent solution, a moment of triumph, but the cost was immediate. The EMP surge had not only taken out the bot, but also the remaining emergency lighting, plunging them into absolute darkness again. And worse, the already precarious power cell they were using for the makeshift antimatter device flickered ominously. "The device, Luna," Cathar rasped. "The cell, Dot, it's failing." Luna looked at the data core. The power cell, weakened by the strain of their chaotic EMP, was dying. Her solution had created a greater complication. They were back to square one, but with even less power, and now in complete darkness, deeper in the dying station. The ticking clock of dwindling oxygen and spreading antimatter decay felt deafening. She felt a wave of despair, a cold, crushing weight that threatened to pull her under. "This is it. I can't do it." Every solution led to another, worse problem. But then she remembered the faces of the children, the frantic thump, thump, thump beyond the habitat door. She remembered her grandfather's words. "Adapt." "All right," Luna said, her voice trembling but resolute. "New plan. We need a bigger power source, and we need to get closer to the core chamber. We have to physically get this thing as close as possible." Access tunnel, Cathar had said, was unstable, full of debris, but it was the only way. This was the moment of sacrifice, not of her life, not yet, but of her relative safety, her remaining energy, her last vestiges of hope for a clean solution. She was going to throw herself and Cathar directly into the jaws of the beast. "Cathar, is there an auxiliary power conduit near the core chamber access? Anything still carrying even a trickle of charge?" she asked, already pushing him forward into the oppressive darkness, relying on the memory of the station's layout. "There is a defunct grav coil array in the sub-level maintenance shaft," he replied, his voice barely audible, directly below the core chamber. "It was never fully decommissioned, but the power feed, very unstable." "Unstable is better than dead," Luna repeated, clinging to the mantra. This was it, the true test of human values and characteristics. Not logic, not strength, but irrational courage, persistence bordering on stubbornness, and the unyielding instinct to protect the innocent. They were going to try to tap into a live, unstable power source, inches from a dying antimatter core, using a repurposed data chip and sheer human audacity. The tension was now palpable. The physical struggle against the tilting station and the dark, the ticking clock of oxygen and antimatter, and the psychological weight of knowing. One wrong move meant instant vaporization. The descent into the sub-level maintenance shaft was a nightmare of twisted metal, exposed conduits, and zero-G pockets that suddenly yanked them upward or slammed them against bulkheads. Cathar, his Xylosian physiology, less accustomed to such extreme environmental shifts, was fading fast. Luna, despite her own exhaustion, gritted her teeth, hauling him along. The makeshift antimatter device clutched to her chest like a lifeline. The air here was frigid, thin, and carried the faint metallic scent of ozone, and something else, a sickly sweet smell that Cathar identified as decaying exotic particles. They were directly beneath the core chamber now, the residual antimatter, reacting slowly above them, eating through the deck plating like acid. The grav coil array ... Cathar gasped, pointing a trembling hand. There, the main power conduits. Luna looked up. Above them, a web of massive insulated cables snaked along the ceiling, some sparking ominously. One, thicker than her torso, thrummed faintly with a barely contained power. This was it, the dormant power source. But it was designed for a grav field, not for a jury-rigged antimatter containment system. And it was highly unstable, ready to overload at the slightest provocation. "Okay, Cathar," Luna said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I need you to stay. Here, just tell me if anything looks wrong. Anything at all." She began to climb, pulling herself up the treacherous swaying cables. The repurposed data core secured to her back with a few desperate wraps of emergency webbing. The cold bit into her exposed skin, and her muscles screamed. She finally reached the main conduit, its surface humming with latent energy. Her plan was pure. Unadulterated chaotic creativity, the kind no other species would ever consider. She wasn't going to plug into the conduit. She was going to create a localized, controlled short circuit using the grav coil's raw energy, then funnel that raw, uncontrolled burst into the rewired data core. The data core, with its meticulously designed internal magnetic coils for data storage, would be overwhelmed, but it might, just might, create a focused, directional magnetic pulse strong enough to momentarily recontain a tiny pocket of antimatter in the core chamber above. It was like trying to stop a bullet with a finely tuned violin. She pulled out her multi-tool. Its sonic welder was too weak. She needed something else. Her eyes scanned the panel on the grav coil array, looking for any exposed wires, any weak points. She saw a small emergency bypass port designed for diagnostic tools. It was her only chance. As Luna worked, the entire station groaned, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through her teeth. A warning. The antimatter decay was accelerating. The decaying exotic particles Cathar mentioned. That was the antimatter, reacting with the ship's hull, a slow, agonizing explosion. Then, another threat converged. From a maintenance tunnel across the shaft, the distinct thump-thump-thump of another maintenance bot echoed. This one seemed more intact, its optical sensors glowing steadily red. The EMP had only been temporary. It had reset. Luna, another bot. It's active. Cathar's voice was a desperate cry. She risked a glance. The bot was already locking onto them, its pulse cannons charging. She had seconds. She couldn't climb down, fight it, and then get back up. This was the moment of maximum danger, maximum demonstration of humanity. Logic screamed surrender. Fear screamed flee. But Luna's human spirit, that stubborn, irrational spark, roared no. She took a deep breath, focusing. She couldn't use the multi-tool for the bypass port. It wasn't designed for brute force. But her body, she had her body with a desperate surge of adrenaline. Luna ripped off a piece of damaged plating from the grav coil array, exposing a cluster of raw, sparking wires. She then took the small metallic stylus from her medical kit, typically used for delicate neural interface work, and, with a grim determination, forced it between two of the live wires in the bypass port. A blinding flash erupted, accompanied by a deafening crackle. The stylus vaporized instantly, but not before completing the circuit. Raw, untamed energy surged through the improvised connection. Luna gritted her teeth against the pain, her muscles spasming as the charge arced through her body. But she held on, forcing the energy through the crude connection to the data core. The repurposed data core, lashed to her back, overloaded violently. Its internal coils glowed with an impossible, searing blue light. It buckled, groaned, and then with a high-pitched hum, it fired. A focused, directional magnetic pulse, utterly chaotic and utterly human in its improvised nature, shot upwards through the ceiling, directly into the antimatter core chamber. Above them, a distant, muffled THWUMP echoed through the station. The sickening sweet smell of decaying exotic particles vanished. The tremors ceased. The tilting stopped. The maintenance bot, mid-charge, froze, its red eyes blinking erratically before going dark. Its power supply had momentarily surged, then flatlined. The crude EMP she'd caused earlier, now amplified by the raw power, had momentarily disrupted all nearby automated systems. Luna slid down the cables, collapsing beside Cathar, gasping for breath. Her hands singed, her body aching, but the station was silent, utterly, miraculously silent. "Luna, it worked," Cathar whispered, his voice full of awe. "The containment ... It is re-established. Temporarily, a small pocket, but stable. The solution that no other species would consider, using a data storage device as a temporary antimatter containment field powered by an uncontrolled short circuit executed by a field medic, had actually worked. Her defects as a human, her chaotic creativity and irrational courage, had saved the day. The silence that followed was unnerving, broken only by the ragged breathing. The oppressive chill began to recede as residual heat from the stabilized core slowly permeated the section. The gravity generators, though still weak, steadied, giving them a much-needed sense of orientation. "The door," Luna gasped, pushing herself up, her limbs stiff and sore. "The habitat ring door. Is there enough residual power for the emergency override now?" Cathar, with surprising speed, fumbled with his comb. His eyes, still dull with pain, flickered with a desperate hope. He tapped a few commands. A distant clunk echoed through the station. Then, a low, grinding whirring began to emanate from the direction of the habitat ring. "Yes!" Cathar exclaimed, a weak but genuine smile spreading across his four-eyed face. "The emergency override. It is drawing power directly from the stabilized field. It is opening." Luna felt a wave of dizzying relief. They had done it. They had bought time. They had created a temporary, improvised power source, a beacon in the void. A desperate cry for help. News of the impossible containment spread like wildfire throughout the battered station. The habitat ring door, once a symbol of their doom, was now slowly grinding open, revealing the faces of the trapped survivors, tired, terrified, but alive. A human child, no older than 5, peered out, eyes wide, before being pulled back by a Regellian parent. Within hours, the long-range distress beacon, powered by the same jury-rigged antimatter pocket, was broadcasting their predicament across the sector. And a day later, a distant flicker on the main viewer, a relief fleet, an alien rescue vessel, responding to the anomaly. The first alien engineers to board Starfall Station were a diverse group: meticulous Xylosians, logical Regellians, and the highly analytical Thalassians, known for their perfect efficiency. They approached Luna and Cathar, who are now receiving medical attention, with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "We have never witnessed such an improvised solution," a Thalassian technician stated, its voice a series of precise clicks and hums as it analyzed the charred remains of Luna's data core contraption. "To use a data storage unit, powered by an uncontrolled short circuit to re-establish antimatter containment ... It defies all conventional engineering principles." "It was chaotic," Cathar explained, looking at Luna with immense respect, "but effective. Only a human, with their unique disregard for established protocols, could have conceived of it." Luna, hooked up to a nutrient drip, managed a weak smile. When your options are zero, you make new ones. That's just how we do things. The recognition of unique human capabilities wasn't just in words. The Thalassians, known for their rigid adherence to protocol, requested a full debriefing from Luna, meticulously documenting her chaotic methodologies. They were fascinated by her ability to look at a catastrophic system failure not as an insurmountable problem, but as a series of smaller, solvable, albeit wildly unconventional challenges. Her defects, her impulsiveness, her willingness to risk everything on a desperate gamble, her emotional drive to save others, had manifested as unparalleled ingenuity. Starfall Station was eventually salvaged, but it became a testament to human ingenuity. The section where Luna had performed her impossible feat was preserved, a museum of desperation and invention. The improvised core, as it became known, was studied by engineers from across the galaxy. A lesson in adaptability and thinking outside the schematics. Luna Vasquez, the field medic, was hailed as a hero. She didn't become a scientist or an engineer, but she continued her work, patching up the living. Yet, her experience transformed her. She now saw the universe not just through the lens of biological systems, but as a vast, interconnected network of challenges, each with an unconventional solution waiting to be discovered. The legacy of the improvised core, born from the depths of human desperation and a medic's stubborn refusal to give up, resonated far beyond Starfall Station. It solidified humanity's place in the galactic community, not as the strongest or most technologically advanced, but as the species of boundless, chaotic creativity, the human way, the willingness to break the rules, to improvise with whatever is at hand, to prioritize life above all else, even at suicidal odds, had fundamentally shifted the paradigms of what was considered possible. The final message was clear. In a universe of intricate design and predictable logic, sometimes the truly unpredictable, the gloriously messy, and the fiercely determined human spirit was the most powerful force of all.